out of the ordinary. We're supposed to be reading from the other way, from Surah Al-Fatiha down, where Surah Al-Nas is the last surah, and that's the proper way to recite the Quran, as well as the proper way to go over it. The only reason we're going over some short surahs is because I know certain people, and most of us, we recite certain surahs over and over in the salah. So I thought it'd be a good chance for us to get to those surahs first before we get to the longer surahs. And there's a wisdom behind that, and actually the way that the Quran was revealed in its order is also a part of the wahy. And actually the Sahaba were told by the Prophet ﷺ to put every verse wherever it belonged, because that is a part of the wahy as well. So there's a lot of wisdom to recite the Quran from beginning to end, and we should be doing it on a daily basis, so that we make Khatm al-Quran, we finish the Quran on a regular basis, whether it's once a month, once every couple of months, whatever it is. We should have a regular standard way of finishing the Quran on a regular basis. Now, what is a goal? We should have a goal that we can recite the Quran once a month, the whole Quran. And that would take, if we finish and we recite fluently, and we practice at it and we get good at it, 30-40 minutes to an hour to recite one juz'ah of Quran. And if we recite one juz'ah of Quran daily, we'll finish the Quran every 30 days, meaning we'll finish the Quran every month roughly. So that is a good standard to have, a good goal to have, that we could say, you know what, let me reach out my goal. Then if we can't do that, we can continue spending the same amount of time, but let's say our recitation's a bit slower, then we just recite a bit slower, and whatever we accomplish as we recite daily more and more and more, we'll become more and more fluent with the Quran. So again, we're just going over some short surahs first to help us get an understanding of those surahs in the salah. Then afterwards, inshallah, we'll continue with the normal way that the Quran is recited. So with Surah Al-Falaq, it's the Mu'awwadatain, Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas, both of them are dealing with the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this one starts, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. Say, I seek protection, I want protection with the Lord of the horizon, with the Lord of daybreak. There's different ways of looking at it. Obviously, when the literal sense is, there's throughout the night a lot of evil spreads about from the spiritual world, like the shayateen. They're more out about and more influential at that time. There's a lot of different things where the Prophet ﷺ would seek protection from when he goes to another land, or when he's going to sleep. In those places, there's snakes, there's different creatures. A lot of things happen at night. So we can take literally and say that I want protection from that. And it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over here, He mentions the daybreak, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that brings the day. And if we look at it, it's switching from darkness to light. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that brings that change. And so if we take it from a literal sense, yes, we want to spend the night safely and securely, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the day, and again we're back to our being able to see, not as frightful as we were when we were in the dark. But if we look at it from a figurative sense as well, aside from just night and day, we go through our dark stages and dark phases in our life. Sometimes it's depression, sometimes it's something else, but whatever, there's darkness within us, that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who can remove that darkness within our hearts, and bring us back to that joy, that time when we're actually smiling instead of frowning, or that time when we actually feel secure instead of fearful. All these different ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can switch our situation, change our situation, change the state of our heart to be a different way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do that, and He's the Lord of that. So we ask Him for that every single time in life, whether it be the literal sense or the figurative sense. We want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us that joy. Now, we have to look, when it talks about day and night, day and night can be a source of good for both day and night can be a source of good for someone, and both day and night can be a source of evil for someone. We can see a lot of scholars, a lot of like, look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Sahaba would spend nights praying and crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing a lot of things, getting them close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the daytime they're doing other things, working for their family, and doing praying their salawat and doing everything they need to do. So it becomes their source, whether it's day or night. Their Lord is making it a source of good for them. But if we turn away from our Lord, we can make both a source of evil, where we're getting further and further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we want also protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that as well. Whether it's and it's again, that's taken it from a literal sense, where our day and night are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even from a figurative sense, when we're going through joy and sadness, both of those can be a source of mercy for us. And at the same time, both of those can be a source of punishment. For example, I could be happy, and with that feeling that I have of happiness, I could do something good. A lot of people, they have this habit. Even my teacher used to have it, that when something good happens, when they get happy, they go do something. They give sadaqah. They go take one of their friends out for lunch. They do something just to show that, you know what, it's a way of expressing their happiness, and by doing something good, doing a good deed in return for that. And when it comes times for sadness, whenever we're patient in those times, we get rewarded for that as well. So now, when we're in every situation, whether we're rich or poor, happy or sad, whatever we're going through, it can be a source of mercy and good for us. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there and we're asking His protection from the opposite, then it will definitely be a source of mercy for us. Now, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Min sharri ma khalaq," from the evil of which He created. This is so inclusive. It includes so many different things that scholars, they interpret it differently. One, they say that it includes shaitan, the main one, because he's the main source of evil, the biggest enemy, the only real enemy that we have in this world. And he's the one that's trying to move us away. So he's included. The hellfire. Every single one of us, we want to abstain from even looking at the hellfire, the smoke of the hellfire. We want to go away from it. And because there's so many different horrific situations within the hellfire, horrific scenes within the hellfire, we want protection from it. And then, like I said before, it also includes different things like wild animals or scorpions or snakes that the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua against, evils such as sicknesses, that viruses. And this time we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection from that as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all and all of our families from those sicknesses and all sicknesses as well. And everything else that's just included over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Min sharri ma khalaq," to just make it inclusive to everything that can be there, that can harm us in one way or another. The other thing is, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ وَمِن شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبْ, and from the evil of the darkness when it enshrouds. See, one thing that we have to understand in this world, that no matter how many daybreaks come, how many times that joy of daylight comes, there's going to be darkness again. That sunset will come about as well. And the same way, when we take it and apply it to our lives, no matter how many joyous occasions we have, there will be times of sadness. You cannot avoid those things. They're not meant to be avoided. They're meant to be dealt with and coped with. We help cope with one another. Like, for example, if a family member of someone passes away, the whole community takes this act and does the act of ta'ziyah, where we go and we help them and advise them, see if they need any kind of help. We help one another cope with those times, and we learn to deal with it ourselves. And similarly with the time of happiness, we learn to deal with both, that we use it in a way that it becomes a source of mercy for ourselves. But if we're trying to live a life, we're trying to secure every angle from our life to be like, okay, I want to make sure nothing happens to me where I can get sad even for a bit. That's not going to happen. That only happens in one place, and that's Al-Jannah, paradise. That is the only place where someone can enter in it and they will never be sad. It's one of the qualities of Al-Jannah, of paradise. So we're not to avoid. There's no way that we can avoid the daylight or the nighttime. Just the same way, there is no way that we can avoid happy times and sad times. But when we enter those situations, whatever it may be, we deal with it in a way, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the evil of both those times. In other words, make it a source of mercy. Make both those times a source of mercy for us. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِن شَرِّ النَّفَّاثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ, and from the evil of the blows that are in the knots. This can literally refer to one, again, the spiritual world, like shaitan, dealing with the horizon. Obviously, we're talking very close. Some scholars say it deals with, interprets the falaq, which is the fajr as well. Shaitan, every night when we go to sleep, he blows knots, and according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in the back of our neck, saying, "Sleep, the night is long. Sleep, the night is long. Sleep, the night is long," 3 times. And the Prophet ﷺ says to the close meaning that when somebody gets up and remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of those knots is broken. When he makes wudu or she makes wudu, the other knot is broken. When they pray salah, then the third knot is broken, and throughout the day they'll be fresh and energized. And if they don't, then throughout the day they'll be sluggish. So at time our mind tells us that, oh man, I'm gonna be tired if I wake up for Fajr right now, and you know what? Let me just sleep in a little bit. I'll wake up for Fajr a little bit late, and we push it, postpone it, and we end up hitting the snooze so much that we might accidentally miss Fajr or just barely make it to Fajr. So we want to avoid that, and that's what we're seeking refuge from. So when we're talking about the Fajr, the daybreak, this is what we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection from. The other thing also is just the black magic, the evil that exists, where even it happened to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where someone made something and they did some black magic on it, and it's through these knots, them working with jinn and things like that, where black magic is done, where we seek protection from. Because in the end, no matter what it is, whether it's black magic or whatever it may be, it can only do anything with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge there. So if we have al-falaq and al-nas, which is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that, then it's not going to reach us. It's not going to reach us to harm us. And if it does, it is only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes for us to reach different levels and heights before Him. And we will, because of the hardship that we'll go through because of those things. But still, when we read al-falaq and al-nas, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says we're protected from all those. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ, and from the evil of the jealous person when they get jealous. Jealousy is, we're looking, first of all, when there's black magic done, this is a type of malice that comes towards someone for whatever reason it may be, that we seek protection from. But jealousy is something that's it's just someone, literally the scholars interpret the evil jealous to be when somebody really has it in him to remove or wish that somebody else's blessing gets taken out. So it's there, it's jealousy. Maybe it might be out of malice, maybe it might not be, maybe it's just because they want it and they don't have it, they don't want the other person to have it. But it is something that's more, it may include a lot more. There's probably only a few people that do black magic, but there's far more people that can get jealous. Now the last thing I'm going to say is, if you look at the last two, these things always come into the thoughts of people, of Muslims, especially ones that have lived overseas a lot, where it's always black magic or evil eye that comes to our mind when when something happens to us. And we don't jump to that. We always read al-Mu'awwidhatayn, the Surah al-Falaq and Surah al-Nas. But this is more, if you look at it, yes, those things exist. There are always jealous people, and there are always people that may be doing those kinds of things like black magic. But this is more, if you look at the surah and we recite the surah, this protects us from that, but it more protects us from start having these thoughts that person does black magic, that person's jealous. Because when you think about jealousy, no one comes up to someone and says, "Hi, I'm jealous of you." A friend may do it to a friend sarcastically, like, "Oh, I'm so jealous," not really meaning anything by it, but just to show them that, "Oh, wow, you have such something very nice." But when it comes to real jealousy, no one really admits it to another person that I'm jealous of what you have. It's usually the thought of the person that says, "Yeah, man," it's seriously, when it's serious, like, "That person's so jealous of me. That person's jealous because of this car, because of this phone, because of this, they're jealous of me." And right away it comes within ourselves. And what we do is with this surah, this should completely remove those thoughts. That person may or may not be jealous. One, we're protected from it. Two, we don't have to deal with having those kinds of thoughts about anyone. Because what if we're wrong and we're having these thoughts of people being jealous or people doing these kinds of things, and we're 100% off the mark? And if we're 100% off the mark, what happens? We're talking about it, we're explaining it. Sometimes we start off and be like, you know what, I don't want to say anyone's name, I don't want to backbite, but do you think like this, or this person's like this and like this? And then it just starts into a bit of rumors that go all around the community, and we were the one that started that. So it really, these surahs, one, it does protect us from the outside, but if you look at the surah also, it just gives us this sense of security internally, that we don't force ourselves or cause ourselves to start thinking and looking around being paranoid of this person, of that person, for these kinds of acts. Now, when it comes to physical security, obviously we seek protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from anybody getting physically attacked, but you want to be aware of your surroundings. You don't want to just walk around naive thinking no one's going to do things. This is not the time that people should do like that. We should understand and how to defend ourselves, and we should be aware of the situation. But these things are more internal, and if there happens, it's more sort of spiritual. It's not something that's literally or physically going to attack us. It's something that we feel, oh, I'm sick, or maybe someone was jealous of, and then all of a sudden we start thinking that they didn't really do anything to me, but maybe they thought a certain way or they looked a certain way at me. So it should protect us from all those kinds of thoughts, that we can just live more carefree in the spiritual realm, that we're more focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instead of the creation and the evil that the creation may do to us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding of these surahs, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for all of our shortcomings. Jazakumullahu khairan for joining us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.